I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Marriage is the best. Hey, welcome back. So today I thought we were going to jump into the kind of final phases conversation, which is what are the developmental tasks within growing in the teamwork phase and growing through and into the renegotiation phase. Phases kind of 3 and 4 that we talked through. Teamwork really comes sequentially right after the disillusionment phase, and teamwork looks quite different depending on whether or not you have kids. But the kind of primary part of this phase to remember is that there's kind of a long middle season where you're working hard to accomplish the goals of the individuals and to move through life together. And it requires becoming a really good teammate, where the honeymoon phase, that first phase, is all about being a really good lover is what I wanted to say. And just the passion of that first stage moves you through and keeps you connected in the honeymoon phase. In the disillusionment phase, the difficulty is like working through the reality of who your partner is and staying committed and having good conversations. And now we're in this teamwork phase, and the teamwork phase can really be, I would say that the teamwork phase can be a grind because it's a long time to stay committed. It's a long time to work, right? Like you have to be kind of resilient and driven to continue to choose your partner and to continue to choose the life that you and your partner are creating. I've seen a lot of people kind of through the teamwork phase, and actually I would say that it's the teamwork phase that I see that most of my clients come to me in marriage counseling, oftentimes feeling kind of disconnected, feeling like unbalanced in their teamwork, and feeling as though they're not being heard. Oftentimes, I think that through the day-to-day grind of our lives and moving through our marriages, there's kind of a wearing down of the team. You know, we get tired, we get, less sleep here and there. Life happens, health stuff happens, kids stuff happens. There's all this stuff happening. And when all of those things are going on and our connections with our spouses are healthy and well maintained, then the things going on don't necessarily, aren't given power maybe to kind of wear down the relationship. But when all of life is going on around us and we're feeling disconnected or unseen or unheard or unknown or misunderstood by our partner, it can very quickly become like those things very quickly grab a lot of power in making us feel like our relationships are suffering and disconnected. And so a lot of the teamwork phase or the tasks in the teamwork phase, you can kind of think about like sustaining connection and maintaining your friendship is kind of the ultimate goal throughout the teamwork phase. And it's a lot of work to sustain the connection in this phase because there are so many things that are going to come at the relationship that threaten to wear it down, whether it be yeah, and we kind of listed some of those off. A few other things that come to mind would be like finances can really wear, you know, in-law relationships or family relationships outside of the marriage, sibling dysfunction, alcohol use, or just general kind of mental health dysfunction can come in and really create a lot of weights on the relationship. Teamwork means turning toward one another and leaning on one another despite all of the goings on outside of the relationship, right? Despite what the kids are doing, despite what is going on in the world, despite what's going on in each individual families, despite the kids and their, consistent needs and consistent requirements, you're protecting your relationship through the teamwork phase from all of those things and from the stress of those things to sustain connection and maintain friendship. So a few things that you need in order to do that would be, number one, a dialogue. Establishing a dialogue, I should say, is a phrase developed by, or a tenet developed by the Gottmans. And basically what they found was that marriages oftentimes come against regular conflict or regular forces of disconnection. And each marriage has a set of issues that are going to come up pretty regularly throughout the marriage based on brokenness from each person's side, brokenness in certain areas, right? And I've talked about ours before in past episodes. So each person has brokenness that they bring into the marriage, and that creates a shared brokenness that creates a consistent issue, struggle, conflict. And in order to not allow those consistent struggles based on the brokenness in the relationship to wear the relationship down to the point of failure, you need to develop dialogue. Dialogue is the idea that we regularly and healthily discuss and connect over the things that create this struggle and conflict. So Becca and I have had thousands of conversations, and that's not actually hyperbole in this specific instance. Other times, most of the time, there's hyperbole, but we have had thousands of conversations about our kind of core vulnerabilities, our core areas where we are broken that cause us to struggle personally and in our relationship. And the goal is not to resolve or fix or solve those issues, but instead to create a dialogue, a healthy rhythm of connecting and communicating around those issues. So when Becca brings her anxieties to me, do I dismiss? Do I defend myself against why she shouldn't feel that way? Or do I lean into her and make her feel seen and heard in this vulnerable place? Then that I'm creating dialogue. If I make her feel unseen and unheard or unreasonable, then all of a sudden she feels disconnected from me and unseen, because this like really important part, this broken part in her, is either being dismissed or neglected, maybe. And so she then goes through life feeling kind of unheard and unseen and neglected in this area that she is actually very vulnerable. So when you, as a partner and as a spouse, can see your spouse's vulnerabilities, their brokenness, the parts of them that continue to bring up these conflicts and continue to create a need for these conversations. When you can make your partner feel very seen and heard in that, and maybe even establish a rhythm of humor around those connections, then you're able to establish a dialogue. She feels seen and heard. You feel seen and heard. You grow in your understanding of your spouse's vulnerabilities, and you grow in your capacity to kind of acknowledge those vulnerabilities. And you're able to move through your relationship in a sustainable way. You're able to sustain your connection and maintain your friendship. But if those things are constantly unseen and constantly unheard and really neglected, right? Neglected just meaning that they're not getting the proper care, then that will wear on the system over time, and it will essentially fail, or just need like outside support and outside support, I should say. So dialogue is probably the number one thing that you need to establish within this teamwork phase to sustain your connection and maintain your friendship. The second would be a system. So systems, I would say, are, rhythms in your relationship that support one another and their role that they play in the family. So supporting the breadwinner at home, supporting the homemaker at home, supporting the two parents that are working. There are needs in each of the systems to create rhythms of support or systems of support. Within the system, you need systems on systems. And so a lot of that really has to do with seeing the areas in the system that are hard, difficult, stressful, overwhelming for your partner, and creating a rhythm where you're supporting them in doing that. The quick example that I'll give for this one would be like cooking dinner. For a long time, I cooked dinner when I got home from work, pretty much like 80% of the time, I would say. I would come home. I would, think up dinner, fix it up, hopefully get some much needed rest for Becca. And then we would come together and eat, and then, hopefully get kids down at a reasonable time so that we could create some connection time. There's been seasons when Becca has taken up the mantle of cooking dinner. And so when I would get home, she would be doing that. I would be able to kind of connect with kiddos. And then, same sequence for the evening. These systems of supporting one another in what is running the household together. Another example would be like grocery shopping. For a long season, I did the primary grocery shopping, and then we kind of switched to doing primarily Instacart, and then Becca would order. Currently, I'm trying to be more intentional about ordering groceries so that we can continue to maintain the nutrition for the children and the home. Little systems, dishes are a system that needs to take place. Like, we need to have a system for that. Who's doing them, when they're getting done, when they're not getting done, when they're important enough to, prioritize, and when they're not. Some of that in our teamwork phase has been developing systems for chores. Chores is a beautiful thing. It is a wonderful thing, because we've got all of these little participants in our system that need to grow in their responsibility as their freedom grows and as they want their freedom in their lives. And so creating rhythms for them of taking care of the house and taking care of their rooms and taking care of just important parts of the system, and also lightening the load on the foundation, right? Lightening the load on the marriage by allowing them to learn the skills and take the responsibility of taking care of some of the house. Systems in finances would be another kind of important part of developing that teamwork, and it would also really impact the sustainability of that system and that connection when we don't have a rhythm of regularly touching base with where we're at with our finances and where we're at in the budget and how we're spending our money and what does that look like and what does that sound like and what does that feel like. And, each person feeling seen in that, I feel like I can get my needs met and I feel like my partner cares about, the things that I'm bringing to the table and maybe the need for certain items or certain investments of time or energy or connection or getting away or hobbies or different things of that nature. So within teamwork, ultimately, you're just trying to sustain the connection and maintain the friendship. You need a dialogue around the vulnerable parts. You need systems that can support one another. You need lots of conversations about the sustainability, conversations about, the vulnerabilities, conversations about what's going on in the system, just literally just the functioning of the household. How can I be a good teammate? How can I support you this week? How can I do this well? And kind of the final task is, how do we balance the mental and physical loads in order to protect the team? So what you don't want throughout the teamwork phase is that the team feels really lopsided. One person feels as though they're taking care of or taking on the majority of the tasks or the stress or the burdens, and that those things can be shared to the point where people feel like there's a balance within the relationship. So the mental and physical loads, and that ultimately that protects the team. And then a couple of good questions for this season is like, just how can I support you? And presenting those needs in a really positive way. So if you have a need within your teamwork phase that's not being met, can you present that in a healthy, positive way? Or is it coming across as a very critical, contemptuous way? So yeah, in general, that is kind of the developmental tasks that you'll find in teamwork in order to be successful. All right, we've come to kind of this final phase, the renegotiation phase, and the tasks that you may find in that season. Ultimately, what you want in the renegotiation phase is to redefine and renew your connection. Getting into renegotiation means you've completed some level of what you came into the relationship to complete, kind of the early phase goals and vision for the relationship. Have a family and raise them up to kind of launching, right? And once they're launched, now what? So we've had this big goal and we completed it, and the completion comes in that teamwork phase. And as the teamwork phase kind of wraps up, this renegotiation phase is kind of what is ramping. Our finances, right? Like, we saved up to this point, we grinded it out and sacrificed and are now at a point where we are very stable and healthy, and we have saved for retirement. So that was kind of our goal. And now we need to renegotiate and redefine, what does it mean that we've done that now, and how are we going to move into this kind of tail end of our existence together? What does it mean to be successful in our finances now that we have saved up to this point? Or, hey, we have really neglected this part. We're going to need to kind of plan for, what is it going to look like to move into our later years while still working. Oftentimes people change as a result of coming into, like, finishing up the teamwork phase, because there are very clear kind of teamwork goals or life stage goals of finishing things and raising things and, establishing yourself in a home. Coming into the renegotiation phase, people are finding difficulty in transitioning from those clear goals into the unknown. What is it going to be like to retire together? We're going to have all of this time back. How are we going to use that time? What do I want as an individual as I transition into this new season? How do I define myself, both within me and within my relationship? What is it going to look like to stay together? What is it going to look like to be friends? What is it going to look like to spend time together? What is it going to look like to spend time apart? What is it going to look like to establish a new, healthy kind of vision for our future and for what we want moving into this next phase? Or those are a lot of the questions that people are asking in this ultimate phase, or this renegotiation phase, as they transition. So the tasks that I came up with when I was thinking about kind of entering into this final form, this final phase of the relationship, would be number one, to acknowledge what you've been through. Acknowledging what you've been through and making some time to like talk through life, I think, is a helpful and healthy way of seeing one another and seeing all of the work that has been put into getting yourself to this point. You also are going to find some things that were really hard and some things that you did well. Hopefully more things that you did really well as you're supporting your partner through the teamwork phase than things that were really hurtful or have caused harm that is still being carried. And so acknowledging some of the hurts and some of the things that have gone wrong is important in the renegotiation phase, that those are seen, that those are heard, that there's some understanding around that, so that not so that we can wallow in it or stay in there, because it's a normal part of our lives, but so that we can move forward, so that we want to renegotiate and renew the relationship. After we're acknowledging, I think the second, kind of task would be recommitting. So we're recommitting to one another, recommitting to our vows, recommitting to new vows. We talked a little bit about how like divorce kind of, or at the end of a relationship, when a relationship dies, divorce is one option, but renewal is another option. And in some sense, when the teamwork phase wraps up, that version of the relationship needs to die, and you need to kind of create or craft a vision for what is it going to look like for the relationship to stay alive. And that's kind of the renewing part. We're renewing our commitment to one another and redefining what that means. Thirdly, we do need to cast a shared vision for the future. What are our hopes? What are the individual hopes that need to be acknowledged for like this kind of final phase, right? Oftentimes, if there are grandkids involved, one parent is going to want to be really involved and one parent is going to want to be somewhat involved. And the discrepancy needs to be negotiated. It needs to be acknowledged and seen and made room for, right? It's okay that we don't want all of the same things, but we do need to establish some more dialogue around what we want in this kind of season. And we need to have shared vision, right? Not just like individual goals and individual things that we want, but we need to have friendship, kind of goals, friendship rhythms. We need to be able to maintain that friendship. And so we need to cast a vision for what that's going to look like in this kind of later phase and later stage. And then you need to finally support and engage each other's individual dreams. If one person wants to, go and serve and volunteer a bunch, showing up for your partner might mean going and serving and volunteering a little bit more than you would choose to do. And if one person wants to engage the grandkids and spend time with them, you may need to engage with that and do that more than you think that you want to. So seeing each other's individual dreams and goals and supporting and engaging those dreams and goals is going to help you to move through this in a renewed, redefined, connected way. You're going to maintain that despite having different thoughts and ideas and goals. So casting a vision for shared goals and friendship, and while you're also supporting and engaging each other's individual goals and desires. Creating balance in that is very difficult. it takes a lot of communication and conversation. And at this point, when you're renegotiating, you're tired. And so it takes a lot to like stay engaged and stay in conversation and continue to pursue one another throughout this. And so if you have achieved the ultimate goals of each of these phases, if you've moved through the honeymoon phase and sustained your connection, and you've moved through your disillusionment phase and sustained your connection, and if you've moved through your teamwork phase and sustained your connection, the ultimate kind of redefining and renewing is much more simple and much easier. It's not easy and simple, but it is way easier and way simpler when you've moved through your relationship throughout all of the seasons in a sustainable way. You get to renegotiate from a much different place. And so that's why the ultimate goal of all of these phases of marriage, and the ultimate goal of marriage generally, is to sustain itself across time, maintain that friendship and sustain itself across time. I think that's the end. I think that is the end of talking about and moving through these developmental tasks and the phases conversation. If you have any other phase-related questions or conversations that you think that we missed, you should email us at marriageisthebest@yahoo.com. We appreciate you sticking around and listening through, and we hope that you have an amazing week. If the phases idea was helpful for you, feel free to shoot us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or shoot us a 5-star on the Spotify. We hope it was a blessing, and we hope that, learning and growing in your understanding of the different phases that your relationship is going to go through helps you and equips you to sustain it better and to have a healthier connection with your spouse. This is the end.
And I got all I need.